work of flex going on there. You can see these two things, this first name and last name, they are side by side. So that's your flex. The same thing here too. You need to group all this in. I'm going to, the thing here is that is the arrangement from the HTML that is missing first, because once that arrangement is not there,
Because
there's no way you want to use
that one
CSS
is
to make it.
weak.
Okay, this is it. Okay, it's even free. That's good. So
That's
once
it.
it's free, it means we can download the
That's it.
materials. So if you look at it, it has both the desktop and the mobile. And if you look at the way it is on the mobile, it's quite different from the way it is on the desktop. So we are going to do both of them. Let me start a challenge. But you will not be able to download the file because you are not logged in. Before you can download the file, they say you should log in first.
I logged in already. I create
Okay,
account.
okay. So once you log in, you'll be able to download the file. And once you download the file, then you have all the materials, the colors and everything. So now that I've added it too, so let me just move it into the appropriate folder so that it can be used later on. So we have these downloads and that's where it's going to be. So let me cut it out from here and move it into the UI, my UI 3. So paste. What are you working on? So paste. Yeah, so let me extract it. So show more option. Mura extract here.
Which
So
version of WinRAR is this?
it's not the one that follow the system. It's just the same now. Winra doesn't, even if they're having different versions, it's just the same thing. So results,
Okay.
but you need to install it. It's an external stuff. You just type
Mhm.
WinRAR online, and so this is the design here. So let me expand this thing so that I can show clearly on the video. Okay, these are the files. So we have the assets, and the asset type is having now these days these people are now including the fonts and the images. So they are including the font and the images. So we are going to include all these things. So what do we need to do? So we already have the file. So this file now, what do we need to do there? We need to look at the design, what you want to do. Then based on the design, you look at the structure. Because that's the first thing you need to do before you jump into the HTML code. So if you look at it, you can see that the mobile and the desktop design are quite different from each other. Like the arrangement is not the same, but that doesn't mean the structure is you are going to have different structures. There's only one structure you are going to have, but based on the functionality of that our flex now, we can use row and we can use column based on the screen we are working on. So if you are to look at it from desktop now, if you are to look at it from desktop when you want to work on something like this, so let me bring out my pen, because you need to structure your HTML correctly. If you don't structure the HTML correctly, then it will not work. So if you are looking at this thing now, I can see it here that we have a container. So if you are looking at this thing using the flex property to arrange it, you see that the entire white area here is the body. No, it's not the color. So if you are looking at this design here, so if you are looking at this design here, this entire stuff here, let me move this into one side so that I can see the stuff. Let me increase this one to this. So if you look at it, we have the body. So this is going to be your body. So this is always the body. Anytime you are working on a design, so the body is what is holding all the content inside it. But inside the body, you have a container that is holding these two items, because there are two items here. We have this container that is holding two items. What are the two items? The first one is this one, which is by this side, while the second one is what you have here. So the first one is this one, the second one is this. But inside this first one too, there are groups too. They are grouped inside this first one. So if you are to look at the groups for this first one too, here we have this text at the top. You have this group here, and inside this group you have 76 and you have this of 100 inside this circle here. So this is a group on its own. And again too, this is another group. But inside this group, you have this text and you now have this text. This is how you are going to be grouping the content. The way the content are going together will determine how you are going to group them from your HTML. Because if you don't group them correctly, then it will not work when you are trying to use flex to apply the to use some of the flex property. Let me go over it again. When you want to do this design, you look at it, how this thing are being, put together. So if you are to look at this now, this entire white area here is the body. But inside the body, we have a container. And why am I calling it container? Is because this thing is limited. If you look at it, it's not going past a specific width on the desktop screen. So there is something that is holding these two content together, and that one now is going to be like a container that is limiting the width, because by default all this content will just keep expanding anyhow, depending on your screen size. But you can actually limit the stuff, but you don't talk to these two items to just go to the center like that. You use a container, and that container is the one that will now contain these two content that is inside it. So here now we have this one on the left, and again we have this one on the right. But if you are looking at it from the left side, you see that this one too, it have this text inside it, which is this result. Apart from the text, it have this circle here, but this circle is having its own content too. So since it's having its own content, it means this circle is a group, and inside that group you are now having this 76, and then again you are having this of 100. So inside this group of circle, there are other two content there, this which are the text, where you're having like A6 here, and you're having paragraph for this one. You can use span. So down here too, if you look at this, these two, they are together. So since they are together, it means there is a group there too, and that group is the one that is now holding this text and is holding this text here. This is for the left side. So when you want to arrange the HTML, this is what you are going to do for the left one. Apart from the left, we have this right side too. So if you look at the right side, it's divided into three sections. This right side is divided into three sections. The first one is where you have this text. The second one is where you have all this one, but they are grouped on their own too, and they are the same thing. And again, the third one is where you have this button. So when you want to arrange it now, this is how you are going to do it. If you don't do it like this, then all this one will not follow each other, because what is going on here, you only want it to, like, you only want this thing to happen inside this group. And if you don't do it like this, if you don't group them together, once you're applying anything from this parent, it will just affect each one of them one by one. But that's not what we want. You want this thing to go together, and since you want them to go together, so that you can now arrange them too, because this is a group, and you can now use the flex on this content like that. So this yellow parent is flex that is placing summary, this entire box, and this continue on top of each other. But inside this second group here too, you are now using flex again, so that all these things can be arranged properly. And again, the spacing here is on the spacing as what you have here. This is the first thing you always do. You always look out for the structure of the page, then you now arrange everything using your HTML there. And when you are not done with that, that's where you now start using the flex property to arrange the content there. So if I remove this particular design now, and if I enter this background here, this is the structure from the HTML. When you are looking at it from the HTML, this is what is going to be the structure. This is, I just omit the content there. This is the structure, like a wireframe of what you need to do from the HTML. So when you are arranging the HTML, this is what you need to add. So the first one here is our body. So this is the body. This line here is the body. Then when you are done with the body, there is a content there, or there is an element here that is going to group whatever we have inside it together. So, and inside it, we have this yellow for the left, and we have this another yellow for the right. But inside this left, based on the content that is inside it, we have a text at this top. This box here is a text. Everything in CSS are treated as box, and that's why I'm using this box. Everything you are going to be doing in CSS is always treating the content of the page as box. Even though you have circle, this thing here is just box, but you are the one turning it to that circle. So everything on the page, CSS always sees them as a box. but you can change the shape to anything that you want. But CSS is in everything on your page as box, and this is what it's going to see. Then based on this now, you start applying as the property that you need to apply on the stuff there like that. So let me go into the VS Code, and we can start generating the content of the page. So let me create the project folder for this particular one. So we have P3. So let me create P4. Let me increase the screen so that I can show clearly on YouTube. So here we're going to have a new folder which is going to be P4. Under this P4, we are going to have our index.html, which is the HTML file. We're going to have the style.css, which is going to be our CSS file. But don't forget, the project that we want to work with come with some assets, which is all the icons for this project. So which is inside the folder of the project. And how do you get it? Just go to this assets and drag it to your project folder. So this asset, I'm going to drag it into this P4, and from there I can import any image that I need to use. And again too, another thing that you'll be using later on is this style guide. So the style guide is the one that have all the colors that you have to use for this particular project. So I'm going to drag it to into our project folder, which is this P4. So inside it, you are going to see all the colors, the font, as you can see. So there is this light red. This is the light red color you need to use. Orange yellow, this green teal, this cobalt blue. So these are the color code. You don't need to start looking for the color that is on the design. So all the color code that you are seeing here, they are already inside this style guide. You just open it, and again too, whenever they are using gradient, here now they are using a gradient. What is gradient? You know, gradient is just a way of you mixing multiple colors together as just a single, like being a single color. If you look at it here, we have it like a dark purple color, but here you have it like a fade purple color here, which is going into this outside one. They've already put all this color here. Look at it for the gradient. So they are saying this for the background. They have this light slate blue, and they have this light royal blue. So you need to combine both of them together in a gradient way. Don't forget, this thing here, they are not giving you the way you are going to combine the color together. The only thing they are giving you the color, but you already know how to do that in CSS by using your linear gradient, because this is a linear gradient, because the color is moving from top to down here, or from down to this top here, depending on which one you are starting with. It's not like it's being mixed in a random way. The color is in a linear form, which is starting from the top and is moving in a linear or in a straight line. That's the reason why it is a linear gradient. But if it's not moving like this, you know, you have to use other types of gradient. Any other place they are using gradient? Yes. Look at it here. The purple here, it's kind of close to like red side compared to this down one here. So they are mixing two colors together too for this entire box. It's not just simple color. But where do you get all this color? Look at it. The color are here already. We have this violet blue, and they have this Persian blue that you need to mix together in order for you to achieve what you have there. And for the other colors too, look at it. We have the pale blue, the light, all of them we are going to copy it when we get to the CSS part. We convert them to variable, and anywhere we need to use it, we just do it like that. So look at it. They've already specified where you need to even use all these things. So for these two, you need to use this for the background, and for these two, you need to use it for this circle. So the color here, the gradient here, these are the color you need to mix together in order for you to have this design that they have here. And for the other color, they are here. But before we get to the color first, you need to arrange your content. That's the first thing. If you don't do the arrangement correctly inside the HTML, then this thing is not going to work the way you're expecting it to work like that. So it's not going to work out because you did not arrange your HTML correctly. So the first thing you need to do when you want to work on a design, look at that design. What is the structure of the design? How do I need to couple all this HTML together so that by the time I'm styling this thing, it will look like what I have on this page? But don't forget, when you're working on a design too, you need to know whether that design is having both the desktop and mobile, because if they are different, you need to look at the way it is too on that mobile side. So you need to look at the way it is on that mobile side. Why is this not giving me the arrow to go back? Let me go and pick the mobile one. So where is the mobile? So let me go back into the design, because if you look at it, there is a mobile design here, which is quite different from what you have on the desktop. And I told you, when you're working on the design, you need to make sure that your design is responsive. When you're working on a design, you need to make sure that it is responsive. And what does that mean? It means your design can adapt to different screen size. Your design can adapt to different screen size. And if you look at the design we are trying to work on, they've already given us what we need to show when we are dealing with the mobile screen, and what we need to do when we are on desktop too. So for this, the one on the right, this is how the content is going to be arranged. And when it is on the left, this is how the content is going to be arranged when you are dealing with a desktop screen. But you know that you can actually use the same layout for both of them. There, you don't need to create separate HTML for this mobile and this desktop. Why? Because we have the flex. Don't forget, with the flex, you can actually place content side by side like this, or you place content on top of each other. But you know there are rules to this flex before it can work. So before you can use flex, there are rules that you need to follow when you are arranging your content out there. And the rules is that when you are arranging content, we have flex container, we have flex items. Container is the one you are displaying as flex, while whatever the direct element inside it is what is going to be the flex items. So here now, if you are to look at this design, you see that we have flex container there and we have flex items. You want to use the flex property to do this thing easily, because a lot of design you'll be working on, flex is what you are going to be using it. And if you don't use flex, then you are going to do a lot of work to move from desktop to mobile, and you don't want to be doing that. What you need to use is that our media query to change what is going to happen based on the screen that you are working on there. So if you have to look at this design, I will go over it again. If you have to look at the design from the desktop, you see that we have the body, which is this entire white area there. But if you look at it on the mobile, there is nothing like that. But this is still body. Everything already covers the body. But inside the body there, we have a container. And why is it container? Is because it's going to contain everything that is here, which what I normally use main to represent. But inside this container, we have the left group. So we have a group on the left, and at the same time, we have another group on the right hand side, which is the same thing on this mobile here too. It's still the same thing on the mobile, just that the arrangement is different. So here too, you have to look at it for the mobile side. This is the first group, but instead of it to be on the left, is now at the top. And again too, instead of this one to be by the right, it's now at the bottom side. So that just is different, but it's still the same thing. So what we are having on the desktop is what we have on the mobile. So on the mobile, they are stacked on top of each other, while on the mobile, they are placed side by side. And based on that now, you already know what you need to use is flex. But in order for you to use flex, you know that you need to have the flex container. And that's this one I'm having this line outside here to act as the flex container. But instead of that container, we are going to have two items. The first item is this left side there. So this is the first one. And the second item is this one. So once I display this one as flex, you know by default, it will place them side by side, but I can move them on top of each other so that it will look like this on the mobile. So this is your first, the first item, while this is going to be the second item. The difference is just the direction. So on the desktop, the direction is row. On the mobile, the direction is column. That's what you just be doing there. But it's still the same structure. But inside this left item too, that one too is acting like a container for the content that is inside it. So if you look at it, it's going to be a container too for everything that is inside it. And inside it, you are going to be having this section here, which is for this text. So like that. And again, this is another section entirely inside this left side, because even though it's a circle, it's still a container. But inside the container, it's having this text and it's having this other text. But the two of them are inside this container that is going to be turned to this circle. Apart from this, you see that there's still another group here. And inside this group, you have these two texts, which is this one and this one here. So we are done with the left side, which is this first container here. So again too, on the second side, we have this group too. And inside the group, it has this content, which is going to be the first item. But again, all these one are not separate. they are one item under the right container here. So this right container here, this everything here is just one item inside it. But inside this one too is not having its own nested item, and that's what you always do. You always put one container inside another container. Even all these box too, they are container for what is inside them, because all this one, if you look at it, they are flex. So when you want to arrange it, this is the content here and this is another content here. That's how you are going to do it, because you want to use flex, and you know that when you are dealing with flex, you need container and you need item, and all these things, they are just flex property. So here too, apart from that one, you now have this button here, which is what you can click to continue the process. And the same thing I'm doing here is what is on the mobile. The difference between them is just that from their container on the desktop, they are placed side by side, while on the mobile, they are stacked on top of each other. And I told you, when you want your site to be responsive, you need to have different design for different screen. But not just for all the screen, we have range of screens that we use to work with, which is our mobile, we have our tablet, and we have desktop. And for now, we only have design for both the desktop and the mobile. We don't have anything for tablet. But since we don't have the tablet, most of the time you always want to go with what you have on the desktop. But if it's not working if it's not working on the tablet, you can actually move to the one on the mobile, or you reduce the size of the text or the container that you are working with. But right now, we are going to make sure that this our site, or this our page content here that we have now, it's really responsive for all the screen, whether we're on a big screen or we're on the mobile screen. But the major thing is that your arrangement is done properly, just like what I'm doing right now. That's the first thing you need to do. You need to look at all these elements are coupled together, and based on the way they are coupled together, you keep grouping them, so that when you are dealing with flex in your CSS later on, you'll be able to apply this flex property to arrange your content the way it's supposed to be on the page. Because with flex, it actually allows you to do all this thing easily. But the problem with flex is that you must arrange the content correctly. If you don't arrange them correctly there, then there's no way the flex will work, because it has some of the item that is depending on the way you arrange the content on the page. So now let me go into the design. Since what we have on the mobile is what we have on the desktop, the difference is just the placement, the direction there. So I will just hide this mobile for now. It's when we want to design, I will bring it back like that. So I will focus on this desktop, and that's what I will be using to structure the content on the HTML page. So the first thing we need to do is to generate the structure of our page, which is the normal thing, and everybody knows that already. So this one, what is the title? So this one is project 4, which is this results like that. So this is the results. Maybe you are creating a polling site where people can vote, and this is now going to be like a result page that the user can see the results of the polling. Or you create an application for user where they can, carry out some tests, and when they are done with the test, they'll go to a page to see the result. That's what this design is there for, like that. So when the user is done with the text, you take them a page to view their results, and you can now show something like this. But it all depends on the type of design you are using. So what do we need to do? We need to structure this our page. The first thing we need to do, so let me be drawing it, and I will be typing what you need to do inside this stuff here. So the first thing we need to have is the body, which is what we've already generated there through this page generator. Then inside the body, we need to have a container that is wrapping everything that we have here. So we need to create a container. Here I'm going to be using main for that. So I'm going to be using main, which is going to be our container. Don't forget, you can use any other grouping element. If you would like, you can use div here. It's still going to work. But the arrangement is the major stuff. The arrangement is the major stuff, not the element that you are using. When it's you are dealing with grouping, the element is not the major thing. The arrangement is what you need to focus on. So it's not that here every time you always use main. If you like, you can use div, you can use section, and a lot of other grouping elements I've talked about there. So let me increase this thing so that I can show clearly on YouTube. So we have this main, which which is going to be this container here. But inside this container, we have this one on the left and we have this one on the right. So let me draw the line for all this one too. So we have this other container too, but it's inside that main, which is the one on the left, and we have another one on the right, because this is how you'll be arranging it. So here now, I'm going to be using section for this. You can use any other grouping element. So for this one, I'm going to have the section for let me call it the left. So I'm giving it a class so that I can select it easily there from CSS. And again, I'm going to have another section which is going to be right, which is this white area. So the right is for this white one here, while the left is for what we have here. But if you look at it, inside this left one, we have some content there. So I need to enter that one. So if you look at it, inside this left one, we have this content. What do we have there? We have this text. Apart from this text, we have this one here. So let me be typing each one of them one by one as I'm drawing them. So here I'm going to have H3 here. Why am I using H3? Why am I using H3? Is because this is not the major title on this page. So this is not the major title. You can just use any of the heading. If you like, I can use H1, but it's not the major title here. Or let me even use H1 since it's the results like that. But I can see from here that this summary is more having emphasis than this result here, and that's why I don't want to use H1 for it. I want to use H1 for this summary. Or even if I want to, I might not use H1 for this summary. I will just use something else like H2, because all of them, they are just title of different area like that. Your styling is what you are going to use to bring them out the way you want like that. So yeah, I'm going to have this your results are like that. Sorry, because I'm recording this in. So I have this your result here. So apart from this your results, we have this other content. This is the content that follows it inside that same container. But if you look at this box here, it has two content inside it. This 76 and it have this of 100 like that. So we need to create that box, this box, and there's that box that you now turn to circle like that. So I'm going to create a box, so which is like a grouping element. So I'm going to be using G for this, and I'm going to give it a class box. Why am I giving it class box? So that I can target it easily from CSS later on. But inside it, we have something like this H6, which is what I'm going to be using to represent that 76, which is it's kind of like a major stuff there. If you like, you can use P, but your styling needs to match what you have on the design there. So inside H6, I have 76, and apart from this one, I'm going to have the P here, and inside the P, I have of 100 like this. So we just finished with this top one and this second one. See how everything is coming into place there. So this is how you be arranging your content. You look at the way they are related to each other, and you keep arranging the components or the page content according to the way you have the design. So here we have the first section for the left, and we have the second section for the right. So on the left, we have this result, which is what I'm using H3 to represent. Again, we now have this box, because inside this box now, or this circle, it have two content inside it. So you have to put it in a group, because that's the way you can make sure that everything are together. So you need to put in a group, but that group now, it's kind of like a circle there, but I'm calling it box. So you know, box is just like a four corner store, but whatever name you are using, that's what you are going to use to target the element in the CSS. So we are done with this one. What do we have next? So let me space them like this. So the next thing that we have is a section. So this is another group too. So here too, I'm going to create another div, because this is another one. So, and you can call it whatever you want. So I'm going to just give it text. So this is a class that I will be using to target this container, and inside it, I will be using my H2 like that. I'll be using my H2, which is going to have this grades as the text, and apart from that one, we're going to have the paragraph, which is now holding that content. But I told you, any of the design you'll be working on, all the content that you want to use here has been provided for you. Your own is just to go to the project file that you're working on. You are going to see the HTML there, and that HTML now is the one that holds all these content, because I don't want to be typing them, and I want to use the same content that is there. So there's going to be HTML file there. So if you open that HTML file, you are going to see all the text that you have to use for the design, because that sometimes the text might be longer than this. So, and you don't want to use lorem ipsum there. You want to use the exact text that is on the design. So all those texts has been provided for you. Just open the HTML file that is given to you. As you can see, you are going to see all the text that is there. So I will use this to just copy this text because I don't want to use lorem. I want to use the same content as the one we have on the design, which is going to be your score higher than whatever stuff that they type here. And once I save this one now, we just finish with the left content. So we just arrange this left content there. So inside the left, we have this result, which is what we have on the top. We have this group here, which is the box that is holding this 76 and of this of 100. Apart from that, I have this another group down here. Why am I grouping them? Is because of the way the content are arranged. The way you group them is depending on the content and the flow of the content. How are this content going together? So that's what we determine what that's what we determine the one you need to put in a particular group. So this down here, I'm giving it a class text because it's just text that is there. So that's why I'm giving it a class text. But don't forget, you can create any class that you want. The name of what you're using for your class, that's what you're going to use to target it from the CSS there, like that. So now we are done with the left side. We want to focus on the right hand side. So if you are looking at this right hand side too, if you look inside it, it is grouped too. So it is grouped. So here we have this summary text that is inside it. Let me use another color. So inside it, we have this summary text. And apart from that, you are now having this group. But before I go to this one, let me quickly type this one first. So here, I'm going to use H3 too. But you know I can target H3 that is inside right or target H3 that is inside left. We've talked about all this one before. So inside this one, we have a summary like this. So apart from this summary, we have this other two grouping too. So the first one is the one that is grouping all this content together here. So the first is the one that is grouping all this one together. But this one is more complex because inside it too, each box are grouped on their own too. So let me create this group first. So let me create the groups, which I'm going to call it, I'm going to give it a class, and it's going to be list like this. So if you want, here you can actually use your UL and LI. Each one of these box now is going to be LI. So each one of these box is going to be LI, but I'm not doing that. I'm using my own custom, I'm creating my own custom list, which I'm using this div. But if you want, you can actually make this one to be UL, and each one of these one, like this reaction, memory, verbal, and visual now, each one of them will now be LI. But I'm not doing that. I'm using the div because I'm creating my own custom list. But if you want, you can use that UL and LI to do the same thing. Your styling is the major stuff. And don't forget, the way you arrange your content, that's the same way you are going to style it. Since I'm using div here now, I'm going to style it according to the div way and whatever I'm putting inside it. But if I'm using UL and LI, you know there's some other thing I need to do, like removing the number that the browser is using by default and start with whatever I have here. But for now, I'm not using UL and LI. I'm only using div. But you can see it in other design that they will be using UL and LI. It all depends on you which one you want to use there. Because with CSS, you can modify any element to look like the way you want there. So I have this list, and this list is this container here. But inside the list, like that, inside the list, we are going to have each item. And what do I refer to as item? So each one of the box inside it is what I call item. There like that. So here, this is one item. What's going on? Let's see, I want to draw the line. So this is one item. So this is going to be another item. You can see all of them are calling it item because the styling is just the same thing. The difference between them is just the color. So like that. So here, this is another item. So each one of them, they are going to be item inside this list. So let me create each one of them inside the list. So I'm going to have a div. But why am I using div to represent each one of them? It's because that one too is having some content inside it. So if you have to look at each item, it's having its own separate content too. So if you have to look at the first one, inside it, we have a group that is holding this, your icon and the text. And again, we have another one here that is holding this 80/100 depending on the scores that is here. The same thing that is here is what is here. See, all of them is the same pattern. The difference between them is just the content that is here, but the pattern is the same thing. You have icon and text grouped together on the left, and you have the score and the total mark on the right, which is the same thing for all of them like this. And we need to create this structure, so like that. And if you look at it, the structure here is the same thing here, it's the same thing here, it's the same thing here. What you need to do now is just to give them the same class if you want to make them to look the same way. But the difference there is than the color. So since the color are different, you cannot give them another separate class that is representing each one of them. And this is how I'm going to handle it if I want to do the stuff. So I'm going to have a deal with item, but apart from item here, I'm going to have another class for this reaction. So here now, item is going to be the generic class that I'm going to use to style all of them. But this reaction now is going to be a class that always change the color of this one to red and the color of this icon to this particular one. So for the second group now, I'm going to have another one which is going to be the same item, but this one now is going to have memory. And from this memory now, that's what I'm going to apply some style that is only meant for this second one. The same thing for the other one and so forth like that. But first, I want to arrange the content that is inside them. But if you look at it, we have the content on the left and we have the content on the right. So for the left one, I'm going to have this P, and inside this P, if you look at it, there is this image and there is this reaction there. So let me type the reaction. So how do we include the image? How do we include image? That one too is cheap because we talked about how to include image on the page by using the image tag. But where is this image coming from? Don't forget, I've already copied this asset. So inside the asset, you have the images. And if you expand it, you are going to see all the images that you are going to use. As you can see, we have this icon reaction, icon memory, icon viber, and this icon visual like that. So everything is given to you. The only thing you just need to do is to arrange your content correctly and you style it so that it looks like the design. Whatever material that you need, it's already been given to you. So yeah, I need to enter the assets. Then from there, enter the images. From the images folder, I need the reaction icon. From there, like that. So I need the icon reaction like this. And from there now, if I save, we're going to have the content. But don't forget, this first P now is representing this icon here and the text. What about the one on the right? You just need to create another P. Don't worry, I'm going to share this code with you once I'm done with it so that you can go over the stuff, because you must know how to arrange content too. If you don't know how to arrange content, your CSS is just going to be doing nonsense because it's not matching the way the content needs to be arranged on the page. So inside this one now, what do we have there? We have 80/100. So let me reduce this in so you can see everything at once. So inside the list, we have a div. This div is item, which is representing each item here. So the item class is what I'm going to use to style all of them to look the same. While this reaction is what I'm going to use to only style this first one. The second one is going to have class memory instead of reaction. The third one is going to have verbal, and the last one is going to have visual. But all of them are going to have this item class, because this item class is what I'm going to put the content on the left and the right like this. But the color will be coming from their own separate classes that cannot apply different color on them like that. So what I need to do now, I've already have this structure where we are having the P, the first P, which is representing the left side, while the second P, which is representing the right side. So I just need to do the same thing for all the other one, because they are the same thing. All the other one are the same. The difference between them is just the content that is here, which means the image and the text that is here, and along with the class that I just mentioned now. So if I duplicate this one down, what I need to do, change the reaction to the text at that place so that I can target it later on, which is going to be memory. Again, the icon is going to be memory like this, and the text too is going to be memory like that. So let me quickly duplicate the other one so that, but they are the same thing. The difference is just the content that is inside them. So this one now is not going to be memory, it's going to be fiber, so that I can apply that green color later on, as this thing is not okay. This thing will not show anything. So this one should be Baba, but the name, they always use the same name as whatever that is going on at that place. So this one now is going to be verbal, and the score, I don't care about the score, but if you want to change it, you can actually update it. So this one is 92, and this one is going to be 6-1, like that, over 100. So again, I will duplicate this one down. So this one is not verbal again. This one is going to be visual. So and this one is going to be 70. It's going to be 72. For the image, it's going to be visual too. Because how am I getting all this in? Don't forget, they are coming from that same particular asset, and all these images are named according to the area where they are being used. So if I expand this in, you see that it's just the same name. So we have this icon memory, we have this icon reaction, icon verbal, and icon visual, like that. So that's the way that site used to arrange the content. To arrange everything according to the title of that particular section that you are working on there, like that. So and this one now, we are done with this container, but we are not done with the entire design because we still have this button. Don't forget, we are just done with this particular section here. So from the summary, we move to this list, and from there we need to talk about the button. But if you look at it now, things started looking somehow on the page. I told you, anytime you have all this thing, you can actually collapse the section that you are not working on at that particular time. Look at the way I did for the left section. Since I'm not working with it right now, I quickly collapse it so that I can focus on the area that I want to work on. The same thing here too. There's a lot of content under this list. So instead of me to start scrolling up or scrolling down, you can quickly collapse it so that you see where you need to put the next stuff. Don't forget, inside the right, we have H3. After the H3, we have the list, which is this entire box here, which is now having its own content. And after it, we now have this button, which is having this continue. So I'm going to have the button here, or it can be a link with something that is taking you to another page. Then it's going to be a link like that, which I'm going to use a like this, but let me use button, and inside the button we are going to have continue, and we are done with the HTML part. So once I'm done with this button, now will be the end for the HTML part. The next thing now is to bring everything together using CSS, because if I load this in on the page, it's not going to look like the way you're expecting it to be, because that's not the way it's going to look like. The way you're expecting it to be, that's not the same way it's going to come out on the page. You need to use the CSS so that it looks like this one. So now if I close this arrangement, and if I go to the page, and once this thing is done loading, you'll see that the content on the page is not going to look like the way we have it on the design. But through your CSS, you see that everything will come into shape. Look at everything we have. So it looks like, it's not even looking like the way we arrange it. Everything is just stacked on top of each other. But how do we make sure that the design is looking like what we have there? Is through our CSS, and by applying the flex property that we've talked about. And you know that before you start applying flex property, there are some stuff you need to do in the CSS there. So first, let me include the CSS file. So we need to link our CSS file. So we need to link our CSS file, and once the CSS file is linked, then we can go inside the CSS. Don't forget, the first thing you need to do inside the CSS file is to do minimal resets that I always talked about. So when you're dealing with CSS, you are going to be dealing with minimal reset. And I told you, when you want to work on your design, you need to know when you're dealing with responsive design, you need to pick whether you want to start from the desktop or you want to start from the mobile. We talked about this when I was bringing in the media query. Now we have the mobile responsive design, and we have the desktop first responsive design. When you say the mobile first, it means when you want to design, you start from the mobile. That means you are going to focus your attention on the mobile. Then when you are not done with the mobile, you scale up your design so that the line looks nice too on the desktop. But when you're talking about the desktop design first, it means you are working on the desktop first. Then when you're done with the desktop, you now scale it down so that it works too on the mobile, so that it displays like this on the mobile. But I don't like to move from desktop to mobile, because there's a lot of things you are going to change when you are moving from top and you are now coming down. You are going to do a lot of changes. But when you are starting from the mobile and you are going up, it's just little changes that you are going to do there. If you look at it, yeah, when you want to do some stuff, when you're dealing with mobile first and you want to go to desktop later on, it's just little things that you're going to do compared to when you're on desktop, when you design for the desktop and you're now moving down to the mobile. And what do we mean by desktop first, the mobile first design? It means whatever we're going to be doing here with that media query, we are assuming that we are focusing on mobile. So that means you're always going to be checking your design on the mobile. But once you want to do the desktop now, you now be using media query to change some stuff that you've already worked on without media query. And that's the process I'm going to follow here too, like that. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure that this our design is looking nice on the mobile first. Then when it's now okay on the mobile, we increase our browser, but we now see that, oh, this thing is not really looking nice on desktop. What do we now do next? We start using our media query to make sure that everything is now looking nice on the desktop screen. So whatever we'll be doing right now is going to be on the mobile. But how do you emulate this stuff? How do you emulate the mobile screen? There are different ways of doing it. One way of doing it is just by reducing your browser to the lowest so that it looks like if you look as if you are on a mobile screen like that. So here now it looks like I'm on mobile screen, but there's a better way of emulating your there's a better way of you emulating different mobile screen, because this one now you don't really know the screen that you're actually testing the stuff on. But how do you know the screen that you want to work on? The browser actually come with a device emulator that you can use to emulate different screen size, even desktop sef. You can use it to emulate different screen size without you changing your browser weight like that. So how do you bring it out? I talked about it last time too when we are dealing with media query. So to bring this thing out, you can either use this your control shift I, which is going to bring out the developer tools bar. Then once the developer tools bar is out, among all these icons up here, the second one that looks like this mobile and this laptop here is what we refer to as this device emulator. Once you click on it and it have this thing, it will go into emulator, and as you can see, you can emulate different screen. So right now I'm looking at how it's going to look like iPhone XR. So if I want to look at, it's going to look at iPhone 12 now. I just need to click on it. It will show you how this thing is going to look like 12 Pro like that, or how it's going to look like on Samsung S8, or how it's going to look like on this iPad mini and so forth like that. But instead of me using all this phone directly, the browser actually come with some standard screen here. So these are some of the standard screen that we have, ranging from the small phone all the way to the large laptop. So we have this small screen, which is this 320. We have this mobile small, which is a lot of mobile devices out there, and we have this large phone, which is something like this iPhone 14 and so forth like that. And apart from that, we now have the tablet. This is a minimum tablet, but the tablet goes more than this depending on the type of the tablet you are using. No, we have the Pro, you have the normal one and so forth like that. So but the tablet start from this 768 and 1024. That's where laptop start from, and some tablet too. We have some tablet that's of this screen, but laptop start from this screen here. And the design was made for this particular screen, which is this 1440. So this the design, that desktop design you are seeing, it was actually made on this screen side. But that doesn't mean your designs do not look nice on this tablet and it does not look like on this 10240. Your design should be responsive for all the screen size that the user will be using there, because there's no way you know that this is a particular screen or this is a particular device that the user will be using to visit your site. So you need to make sure that whatever the device that the user is using, the site is still displaying correctly on that device. So how do you now emulate different screen size? That's where this browser device emulator comes in. So how do you bring it out? Just hold down your control shift and you press I. It's going to bring out the device emulator. And if the thing is not activated by default, you're not going to see it like this. This is what you're going to see, but you can actually activate the stuff by clicking on this toggle device emulator. And once you click on it, it will go into device emulator and you can quickly emulate how this is going to look like on the different screen there like that. So this is what I always use a lot like that. But for now, I won't be using this because I want you to see the entire screen. So I'm going to move this side by side But if I move them side by side, there won't be enough screen to work with, because now if I enter the dev mode with this small one like this, you see that the dev mode is really taking some space that I don't want this thing to take there like that. So you can go to more tools, and once you're under the more tools, you can click on this developer tools, and once you click on it, it's going to bring out the stuff. As you can see here, it's going to bring out the device emulator. But now I cannot emulate base screen correctly. Look at it, it's not showing this base screen correctly. Can you see? It's telling me that it's only emulating it this only emulating the 75% because there is not enough space. But now if I expand it, you see that it's going to emulate this thing correctly. Once I go to this 768 on, can you see now? It's now emulating it as 100%. But if I reduce the screen, there's no way that space will be able to emulate some of the screen here. You are not even going to see them like this 1440 now. There's no way this small screen here will now be emulating it. It will not give you correct stuff. You can see from 1440 it dropped down to 702 because this small screen here cannot emulate that big screen. So because of that, I will just be using this one for now by reducing this screen down like this. But when we want to actually do this in a correct sense, we should always use that device emulator so that you see how it looks like on different devices there. But in order for you to see what is going on the page and you can see the code at the same time, I will just place them side by side like this. So what do we need to do? We need to do minimal resets. So what do we need to do? We need to do our minimal reset. If you look at it now, there's some space that I don't want here that the browser is using by default. So what do we need to do? The first thing you need to do is to select all the elements on the page by removing the padding. If you need the padding later on, you are going to add it yourself. Again, by removing the margin. M0 is just going to auto-complete to margin of 0. That's what I'm typing. When you say P0, 0 not PO. P0 will just create just CSS autocomplete stuff. So you can actually type it yourself if you don't want to use autocomplete because it's only for VS Code stuff like that. So padding 0. Again, another thing you need to work with is box sizing, which is going to be border box. Because when the CSS is calculated or when the browser is calculating your padding and the width later on, you don't want it to be giving a separate width to the content and the padding too will be creating its own space. You don't want something like that. So these are the minimal setting you always do on the element. You can see no space here again. You will now be the one that will apply the spacing anywhere you need them. Not that the browser will now be doing some stuff for you that might affect some content on the page later on that will not make it to look like the design on this page here. All the spacing you are seeing on the design, you'll be the one that will put them there. Not that the browser will just be putting any random space anywhere you don't need that space. So after you are done with this one, the next thing you can work with is body. But first, I want to convert all the colors that we are to use for the design to variable. And I talked about variable in one of our class, now one of our previous class. A variable is just a name they are given to a property or they are given to a value that can be used in different places. And don't forget, I mentioned about global or I mentioned about global and local variable. Global means that it can be used in any of your selector, while local means it can only be used inside the selector that define it. So if you define a variable inside a particular selector, you can only use it inside selector and anything that is inside it. You can't use it outside of that selector. But the variable that I want to use right now, which are all these colors, I want to use them outside or I want to use it inside any selector that I want to be using to target my element. Since I want to use this in, so I need to use a global variable. And how do you create a global variable? So any variable placed inside this root selector or any variable placed inside this HTML selector are referred to as global selector. They are referred to as global variable. So any variable placed inside HTML or placed inside this root, they are referred to as global variable. So this HTML, this root here is the same thing as you typing HTML because the root is just targeting your root element. And what's the root element from the HTML? The root element is just this HTML. So which means the two of them are referring to the same element. So this HTML are the same thing as what I have here, which is this root. But I'll be using root to define it, but you can actually use HTML to it to still work. Whatever variable you define here, You can use it inside body, you can use it in any other selectors that you are going to be using to select the element on the page. So now I'm going to copy all this color, convert them to a variable. What is variable? A variable is just a name that you are using to represent a value that we'll be using for the property. For example, here now, if I have background, I can use red like this. The value here is red. But instead of me typing red anywhere I need this color red, what I can do is to define a global variable for that. And anywhere I need to use that color, I will just call it. For example, now I'll define a variable known as color, and the what is this representing is representing this value. So anywhere I need to use red, I will just call the color. And anytime I need to modify that particular value, I don't need to start looking for where I'm using this thing. I will only modify the source. So how do you use it? Is by using the var. Inside the var, you just call the name of the variable, and this var will locate the, can you see, it's still working. And if I change the value to something else, it will still work, because the variable is just representing the value that you put there, like that. Hey, sorry guys, let me pause the video. Hello, I hope you guys are still here. This is really try 56 minutes. Yeah, but we still have a lot to do. I might need to split this in into two video. Like tomorrow we'll continue with, but let's just see where this thing take us to before 1 hour 30 minutes, because I don't want the video to be more than 1 hour 30 minutes. The more the length of this thing, the more the size and it's going to take for YouTube to process the video. I don't want it to go more than 1 hour 30 minutes. So let's see, we still have like almost like 30 something minutes like this. So let's see where this thing can take us to. So now this is not what I'm going to be using. I will be using the same name as the color here. But if you look at it, all these things, they are not having proper name. I need to convert it to a proper variable. In order for you to have a variable, the variable name must start with this double hyphen here, then followed by the name. And you must not have any space in the name. Anywhere you need to have space, you can bridge it with underscore, or you can bridge it with hyphen like this. So this one can be color 1, so you can do it like this, or you can do it color 1 like this. Both of them are not the same thing. So this color 1 here is not the same thing as this one. This one is underscore, this one is hyphen, because you are using it, but you must not have space in between the names. So anywhere you need to have space, can you see it will be error. You can't have space in the name. And the three of them like this are not the same thing. The three of them are not the same thing. Even though the name looks like the same, to the system or to CSS, they are not the same. So when you call colored 1, it knows that it's supposed to give you orange. As you can see, when you call it in this one, you know that it's representing orange. When you put underscore there, it knows that you are calling the one for the red. And when you use hyphen, it knows that you are calling the one for the blue. So the name are not the same. And anyway you need to have space, you have to do something like this. It's either you close the space like this, or you use underscore to separate the items where you have that space, or you use hyphen. You can use any of these method here. So let me just comment it out for reference sake there. But I'm going to copy all these colors. So look at it now. These are the color that I copied from that style guide. But right now it's not in the correct way that it needs to be there in order for it to be treated as a variable. First, there's space here, so we need to close all the space. So I'm going to use hyphen to close all the space that I have there, like that. So I will close all this space. But look at the first one too, is not having double hyphen and it's still having space. So close that space, convert it to a variable in a more sense. What is this thing doing like this? This one is not supposed to be here. This is how it's supposed to be. Again, two semicolon at the end. But you just don't forget, when you are creating a variable, the name of the variable, the column, the value of the variable, and semicolon. That's when you just complete a variable. Now, as you can see, it's not showing the color correctly because we have HSL. No, we can use HSL, we can use RGB, we can use RGBA, we can use hexadecimal. We've talked about all this in when we are talking about color representation. So I'll quickly convert all this in to a proper color there like that variable. So close. Oh, jeez, this thing should leave. Let me reduce this in so that I can quickly do it on time. Instead of this thing that is so here, close. And this is what you need to do. It's not a must so that you do this variable stuff, but I always love to do it like this. Since I will be using the color in different place, so it's always good that I create a variable, and anytime I need to change anything I need to change, I will just so copy this one too, like that. So create a variable out of it. What's that? VS Code, why are you taking time to load? My VS Code is loading. Okay. So here, close. Don't forget you cannot have space. You cannot have any illegal character there like that. So which means this bracket that I have here, I need to remove it and just convert it to this background here. You cannot have any illegal character there. So it will not allow you to use that. So you have to convert it to a proper name. You can still use the same name that is there, just that you have to make sure that it's well arranged before it will work. Because what is given to you is text, is not variable. And those people that created this thing, they are not developers. So they are not creating it as a this thing. You have to be the one that will convert it yourself. And I'm putting all this circle and background so that I can know where to use each one of them. That's why I'm putting this background and circle. I already know all these ones should be used when I'm dealing with the gradient for the circle. The first two is when I'm dealing with the gradient for the background there, like that. So these are the things you work on, and that's why it always look like when you are developing a site, it used to take time because there's a lot of arrangement you need to do first before you start jumping into the coding there like that. And these things are very important that you do them because they make it easier to do. And as you can see, use to get all the transparency whatever stuff, we can use all this HLL whatever stuff. But for now, I will just copy all this. So this is another color that we need. You don't need to separate them like the way I'm separating, putting space in between them. It's just and just all the spacing that I'm putting here, you don't need it to. But for now, I'll just put it like that. And I think that some color they are not giving us. We can actually create it by ourselves by using our HSL and use our lightning to make it white or darker if we are not getting it. All right, I think we have all the color code right now. I think we have all the color. So what else are we to use? Look at it for the paragraph. They said the font size is 18. What is family? The font that is using there is this Anke Bro text here. And again, the font weight that are being used is 500, 700, and 800. But luckily for us, we are given this font too. So we can actually use our local font. If you have this font installed on your system, you don't even need to be doing what I want to do right now. But that's bad practice because people that will be visiting your site will not be using your system. Just because you have the font on your system doesn't mean those people that will visit the site will have the same font site. And if they don't have the font, you know that the browser will go back to its original font, which is going to be that time New Roman that is using right now. So anytime you're using a particular font family and the browser cannot find it on the user system, it will go back to the default one. Another way of doing it, which is something I've explained too, is by going to this link here and use the Google links to connect to your page there. But since we already have this thing locally, because under the assets, the font has been given to us. If you look at it here, we already have it, which is this variable. And any one time you have this variable, it means all the weight has been included. So this variable here has already included all the weight and all the style that you want. So we need to include this anchor, growth, whatever stuff into our page. But how do we make the browser to be aware that we already have the file here? We just need to use it. So how do we talk to the browser to load the one that is here? Not to be looking for it on the user system. It should load it from the project. So we need to use this our font face that I've already talked about before. We use it as for one of our projects. I think we use it, but if you've not used it for one of the projects, so I'm going to show you how you can include a static font. That means the one you already have on there in your project assets folder. It can be anywhere, but it's part of the project. So how do we include this our local font now, the one we have here? So we have this font. How do we include it to this our page? If you look at under the static, you can actually include any one of them that you want. But right now, I want to include this variable one. The variable has already include all the font weight. Don't forget the design is using font weight of 500, 700 and 800. But this one here have all the font weight that you need, and it's been given to you already. So how do we talk to the browser to load this particular font, not to be looking for it on the user system there? So we need to use this font space rule. So this the font space rule is what you can use to tell the browser that you have a particular font name. Anytime you use that font name, it should look for it wherever you pass inside this URL. So this font space is a rules that you can use to talk to the browser that I have a particular font family I want to use. So for example, I have Rakib like this. So anytime I mention Rakib as my font family, I want the browser to go to the link that I pass here, and that's the font it's going to use anywhere I'm calling Rakib as my font family name. So anywhere I'm calling Rakib as my font family name, go to this URL and pick the font that is there. So how do we pass the URL? Don't forget, it's just this static one that we have like that. And this is what Google is doing for you behind the scene. Anytime you connect to Google, this is what the Google is going to do for you when you connect to the Google link. You are going to copy the link that is being generated for you. But what is that link doing behind the scene? It's going to create all the necessary font space for the link or for the fonts that you are selecting on that page there. But we are doing it by ourselves because we already have the font in our project asset. And since we already have it, you need to create this font space rule. And once you create the font space rule, the reason why I'm putting it at the top is because I want to use it down here. So since you want to use it down here, that's why I'm putting it up like this. So you need to use this thing first at the top before you start calling this your font family down here. So here now, if I come here and if I use the font family, what's the name of the font family? Look at what I define at the top here, which is going to be Rakib. So if I save it down, nothing will happen yet because the browser doesn't know the address where to fetch the font that you are calling this Rakib from. The name can be anything, but the URL is what matters here, because the URL is what you are going to use to point to the font that you want the browser to use anytime you are using this name. So I'm using Rakib now as a font family name for every of the content on the page here, but it's not working. Why is it not working? Because the browser doesn't know the address to load to get this Rakib from, and this doesn't know what to use, then to go back to its original font family like that. So we need to point to this file here. So how do we point to it? You know how to locate a file that is inside the same folder or that is not inside the same folder and so forth like that. So since they are inside the same, they are not inside the same folder, but it's inside the child folder. You mention the child folder first, which is going to be this asset font, and this is it here. And what am I doing here? So what I'm doing here is that I'm talking to the browser that, okay, I have a font family name that I want to use. Anytime I mention this Rakib, this is the font you have to use for that particular element. So here now that I'm using Rakib as the font family for all the content now. So what the browser will do is that it will come here and look for the URL. And that font that you pass to it inside the URL, that's what it will be using anytime you call this Rakib, which is the name. The name can be anything, but the font must match whatever you have in your project folder, or if it is online, you can connect it to any one of them. Can you see now? Can you see what is happening? Everything has changed. So the name, because I'm using Rakib now, it will come here, the browser will come to this font space, it will now look at the URL, and whatever font you pass there, that's what you will now be using for this name that I specify. But I'm not going to use Rakib, I'm going to use the same name, because it's always good that I use the same name, which is going to be this Anchor Grow Text like this. So this is the name I want to use like that. But don't forget, you can name it anything, just like the way I did it right now. I use Rakib and it will still work. The major thing is this source. So whatever name, whatever font that you already have in your project folder, if you want to use it, you don't want to connect to Google, you don't want to depend on the one that is on your system, you want to use a particular font that you already have in your project folder there, you are going to define a font face rule. And this font face, you are going to have font family. What name do you want to be using anytime you want to use this font that is coming from this source? So this is the font you want to use. But this font now, which name do you want to use for it anytime you are calling font family? So you want to use this name. And once you use this name, the browser will come to this rule, it will look for the source, and whatever that is inside the source, it will look for that font, it will download it and do the necessary stuff it needs to do. And as you can see now, it's showing. But don't forget, whenever you want to use this font, it's always good that you use the family name at the end of it, in case there is something that goes wrong. For example now, maybe I made mistake with the naming. I made mistake with the naming of this thing. Maybe I just type nonsense here, and if I save it, if the browser cannot find that font, even though you are specifying the stuff, but now the browser cannot find a file with this name, as you can see, it's going back to its default setting. But instead of it going back to the default setting, it's always good that you pass the family name at the back of it, so that in case it's not finding this thing, maybe you mistakenly remove this file, or you don't include it later on when you want to deploy this page online like that, which is something we're going to do tomorrow. When we are done with this project, we are going to deploy it so that anybody can go to that link and you can see the results on your phone or any device that you want to check this stuff are there. Now imagine that when you're uploading the project, online, so that people can have access to it, you did not include the font. So you did not include the font size there. So now imagine that you did not include the font size on this thing, so it's not going to show. So you can now include this. Can you see, it's not using the one you want, but it's using the default one from the family. So it's always good that you put this default family at the end of everything, because if the font is missing or something is wrong with the font, there like that, the browser can fall back to this one. And when it's done loading this one, because sometimes too it might take, depending on the network of the user. So if the browser is still loading the font online, but you know when you deploy the stuff, it needs to load the font first before it can show there. So when the browser is still loading this font, it can actually fall back to the family one, and once it's done loading, then it will now go back to it like that. So if I save this one, it will only switch in between. Can you see, it will switch between this sans serif to this Kanken Grotic here like this, depending on the time it takes to load the font. Because depending on the font you are using, some fonts are kind of a big, or when you are loading them from online, so the browser has to go there to fetch the file first before displaying it on the page. So at that time when it's fetching the stuff, you can actually use the family one. The browser can actually be using the family one, and when it's done, it will switch back to whatever you want it to use like that. Okay, we still have like 18 minutes left like this. So now if you look at the content of the page now, we are using the fonts. So we are using the font that the design is expecting us to use there like that. So we are using the font that this thing is expecting us to use on the page. So when you are working and you need to change the font, this is what you need to do when that font is already in your project folder. Like means you already have the font. You've already downloaded the font. Just take it into your project folder there, and from there you can define a font face rule by specifying the family name. I mean the name you want to use to load the font. And anytime you are using this font family name here, the browser will come to this source and it will load whatever font you are connecting to like that. But don't forget, this needs to be part of your project, not the one on your system. Because when you deploy this project later on, nobody will be using your system to load the site. So the project will be online on the server there. And since it's going to be online on the server is not using your system. And there's no way the thing will come to your system to come and load the font. So you need to include it as part of the project file that you are going to upload online. And you're going to see how to do this thing for one of these simple server that we used to use to deploy, and it make it free to deploy. You don't need to pay for this one. You can actually deploy freely with this service. But first, we need to build what we want to deploy. And we've already arranged the content on the page using our HTML there like that. So what do we need to do next? So after we are done with this, our basic structure here, which is we have the font face that we use to load our local font that is part of our project. We do some minimal resets by removing the padding, removing the margin, change the box sizing to border box, change the font family to this Kanken here based on the one that the project is expecting us to use. Again, we have these routes that we use to set up global variable that we can use in our project. And apart from this one now, we can now continue with other content that we have on the page, which is going to be like this body. So this body we have some minimal setting too that you always do with it. One of the setting here is that you set the width to 100%. So overflow x overflow x is going to be hidden, so you don't want anything to be going outside of the body on the horizontal axis. That's why I'm using this overflow x. You don't want to be scrolling from left to right when you have a content that is going outside. This one is just a minimal setting. Right now no content is going outside, but you know, if you have image, that sometimes when the image is bigger than your content there, it will start going outside. So overflow x, we have the minimum height to be 100 vh, so which means here now, I've mentioned this one too before. Your body is not always this entire screen here. This is not the body. The body always stop where your content stop. So your body too is stopping here. But we want the body to maintain the minimum height of the browser that you are using, the screen of the browser that you are using. So here now what I'm saying, that the body, the minimum height should be from here to here, not where the content is stopping like this. So this is a minimum setting that you can use for the body like that. If it's having background, you can put it there, but currently here I did not see any background. But let me see, I think it have this gray. Let me use pale blue. So background now should be this pale blue. So why am I typing pale blue is because we already have it here on line 28 as one of our variable, and I'm typing the name. Once I click on it, my VS Code is going to complete it, because you need to put the var, and inside the var you pass the name of the variable, just like the way you specify the name there. And if I save it, can you see the background is going to change to that particular background? But I see that this one is not white, and the reason it's not white is because this is white color. Look at the white color. The one at the back is not technically white, it's just pale blue, which is close to white like that. And that's the reason why I'm using it. But don't forget, we are working on the mobile design first. So we are working on the mobile design first like that. So what do we need to move into next? So if you go back to your page, after the body, what we have is main. So the next thing we need to target is this main here. And if you look at the main, how is it being arranged on the mobile? The main is the one that is holding this content here and this content. How are they being arranged? They are placed on top of each other. So how do you do something like this? In order for you to arrange the content that is inside main to be on top of each other, you need to use flex. So look at the way the main is. Can you see that the main is not covering up the entire screen side, but we want it to cover up the entire screen there. So how do you do this? One way of doing it is just by displaying it as flex. So once I display it as flex like that, can you see what it's doing? It's placing the content side by side, which is not what we want on the mobile, because on the mobile, that's what you want on the desktop, but that's not what you want on the mobile. What we actually want on the mobile is that the content here, which is in your result, will be at the top, while summary will be under it. So what do we need to do? You know this one already. We just need to change the direction of the flex. And how do you change the direction of the flex? Is by using flex direction. Don't forget, everything we are doing here, we are assuming that we are working on the mobile. So whatever you need to do here must work according to the mobile design. And that's the reason why I'm converting it here from row to this thing. And as you can see, everything are now on top of each other. But this thing is not covered up the entire screen. And that's why I have to put this red, so that you see where this thing is stopping. There. So one way of doing it is by just doing this 100%. So we want the height of this stuff here now to be 100%, or if it's not going, because that is depending on the content that is inside it for now. But once we started placing all this content, it will go down. But I want the height for now to just be 100 VH on the mobile like this. 100 VH means the screen that you are working with like that. So, but I don't want it to be 100 VH. But right now it will look like it's working. But if this your content is going more than the screen, it means the content will not pass whatever we have here like that. But for now, I'm just going to remove this. As you can see, it covered up the screen. But now I will remove it. By the time we started increasing all the content inside this your top section and this bottom section here, you see that it will keep adjusting itself automatically. Anytime you don't mention the height, it's going to depend on the content that is inside it. So if the content reduce, the height of that parent too will reduce. If the content increase, then the height of the parent too is going to increase here. And for now, I'm only going to do the stuff like this. So I'm going to leave it like this for now. Then we can start moving inside each one of them. So we have the left group and we have the right one. Why am I doing all this thing? Is because That's the same way we give them. So if you look at it, we have a section with left. So I'm targeting this element based on the class name. And again too, I'm targeting the second one based on its own class name, which I'm going to give them different background color so that you can see what is going on there. But if you look at the design on the mobile, the background of this one is a gradient. So look at it. The background of this left one here now is gradient. So we have a gradient that is moving from this blue that is going up here. And it has been given to us already, the color we are to use. So these are the two colors we are to mix together. So this is a light one, which is the one you are seeing at the top. So if you look at the top, you see that it is light compared to this down one here. So we need to mix these two colors together and use it as a background for this your result section here. So how do we do that? You already know the property to call when you want to create gradient. So we have background, or you can use background image. Both of them are going to work. And inside this linear gradient now, you need to specify the color that you want to mix together. So we have this linear gradient. So how do I specify the color? Because this is a variable. We already have it as a variable. So what do we need to do like that? So I want you to start so from this one. So in order for you to use it, don't forget, anytime you are calling a variable, you need to pass this var into it. So comma like this. Then we can call the second one too. So let me copy this one like this. And after this one, I'm going to cover. There's no need of you using this var. You can just put the color directly yourself. But the reason I'm doing this is because I'm doing it in a more professional way. Like I'm doing this in the way you are going to be working on a bigger project. Because when you're working on a bigger project, some of this color here, you are going to reuse them in different places. So and you don't want to be doing copy and paste of this 25, 100%, 67 here. And in case you need to modify anything, this is the only place you just change it. You don't need to start looking for where you are using this variable. This variable is very powerful because you can define a variable inside this file and you are going to be using it inside another file later on. Once the browser sees from one file, it will load it for you automatically in another file. And since it's global, it will always work in any of the selector that you are working with. And if I save this in now, can you see? It's going to create that stuff for us, which is what we have there, which is now creating the gradient. If you look at it, it's starting from the bottom and it's moving up here. Well, why is it working like that? Because with the blue that I specify is this first one, which is the one you have at the top, and this is what I specified at the second one. So you know that it will always move from the top to the bottom by default, but you know that you can change the direction, which is what we've already talked about when we are dealing with background. So I don't need to go over that one again. So what do we have next? So we are done with this one. We just need to work with the content that is inside it. And if you look at it, all the content that is inside it here, they are placed on top of each other too. We have this your result at the top, we have this box followed, and we have this another box here. So what do we need to do? We need to display this one too as flex. No, don't forget, flex is what you can use to place content on top of each other like that. So you can use the flex to place the content. So yeah, I will display this left as flex. Display flex, come outside. So we have this display flex. Then if I save it, you see that it will place them side by side. But this is not what we want, so we need to change the direction based on the way we already added all the content. So once you change the direction to column, it should place everything on top of each other. But you might be wondering that why do I need to do that? It's because some of the flex property that I want to use. For example now, like this direction and this gap. The gap is what I want to use to specify the space in between each one of this area here. If you look at this, your results, the box here and the one down here, they are two jam-packed together. But if you look at the one we have here, there is space in between them. The space here is the space here. So how do I apply that space at once without talking to each one of them? That's where gaps comes in, which is something I've already explained before. So if I use gap of 2 rem, it means the spacing in between each group. As you can see now, there is space here because this is one group, this is another group, and this is another group. And the spacing that would to be in between each one of them, it's going to be this particular value. Again, I want everything to be center. So AIC, which is going to be align item center, which means horizontally is going to be this because I've already changed the direction. It's going to move everything to the center, but that's not the text. It's not the text that is going to the center. If you want the text to go to the text center, we need to use text align text align is working with text, while align item is working with the content, which is the container. So container is different from text. So here now, that's why you see that this text and this one, they are not going to the center, because that container there is covering up the entire screen like that. But in order for the text to go to the center, you need to use text align. This align item is moving content, while this text align is only moving the text. So if I move this one now, you see that all the text will go to the center, not the container. But if you want to move the container to the center, that's where this one is going to comes in there. But there is something going on here. There is something going on here. What is going on there? Look at this bottom part here. We have border radius, but the border radius is not at the top here. So the border radius is not on the left top, it's not on the top right. We only have it at the bottom right and the bottom left, and we already talked about how you can do something like this too. So we have the border radius. You know, this border radius, you can give it one value. It's going to apply it to all the side at once. So as you can see, it's applying that 1 rem to all the side. Let me use 2 so you can do it more. But now I don't want it to happen to this top left. I don't want it to happen to this top right. So what do? We need to give it all, we need to give all the side the value. The first value is corresponding when you are specifying for value. This is a top left. The second value is going to be top right. The next value is going to be bottom right, and the last value is going to be bottom left. So when you give it 4 value, this is how it's going to apply the value. The first value is for this top left. The second value is for this top right. The next one is for this bottom right, and the last one is for the bottom left. So which means this top left and this top right, I don't need any value. So I need to use 0, 0 for them. But for these two, I need to have this thing. So this one is going to be 2 rem. This one is going to be 2 rem. The first value here is for this top here. The second one is for this side. The third one is for this. The fourth one is for this one here. And if I save it now, you see that we only have it at this bottom part. We don't have it at the top here, which is making this thing to come. We are getting this thing into shape now. But the only thing we have there is there is no space inside this container. Look at this container. There is space at the top here, and there is space at this bottom here. So how do you apply space inside the container? Don't forget, that's your padding. So when you apply space inside the container, what you need to do is to apply padding. But the padding on the top and the bottom, I want it to be 2 rem. The one on the left and the right, I want it to be 1 rem. Or if I want, say, I can apply more at the bottom side compared to what we have at the top there. So again, another thing that is missing from this top here is this color. The color we are having here is not the same thing as what we have here. So which I'm going to start with each one of the items you have inside this left. If you look at it, we have H3. And this H3, you have a particular style that is going on there. And one of the style here is that the font weight is not that bold. So I'm going to be using around that 500. And again, too, the size is not that big like what I have there. So what do I need to do? I want to select the H3 that is under this left. So what is the color? The color is not white though. The color is around this pale blue. So it looks like white, but it's not really white. So it is this pale blue. And if I save it, you see that it's going to have that color. So it's not really white. It's not that this is just that it is close to white. Again, the font weight we have to use there is around that 500, I think, to me, because that thing is not 700. By default, don't forget all your H1 to H6, they are using font weight of 700. H1 to H6, they are using font weight of 700, but that thing should be around 500. As you can see now, it has been changed. And again, too, if I want, I can change its font size to any size that I want. For now, I will just leave it like that so that I can work on this circle. And that's where I'm going to stop, because this video is already 1 hour 29 minutes like this. So let me quickly move into that box so that we can work on it. And in the next class, which is tomorrow here, we continue with the other content. And once we are done, we deploy the site so that everybody can check it at their own end here, whether on your mobile or on this in there. So what do we need to do? So on the left side, I have a class box, which we need to apply the gradient. So this is the box here. So this box is this circle here. So what do we need to do? we need to give it height, we need to give it a width, and apart from that we need to move all the content inside it to the center, and again change the color, and apart from that we need to apply a gradient as a background, just like the way we did for this left here that we're using linear gradient. We are going to do the same thing too, but here now these are the colors we need to use. Can you see they have already given us the color to mix together? We have this one and we have this one down here, which you have which we need to mix together. So let me copy all the color that we need to mix together, and we are going to use our linear gradient, and we'll make sure that it is looking like the way it's supposed to be there. So background, then linear gradient, then inside this place we need to pass all the color code, but don't forget we are using variable, and since we are using variable, what we need to do is to call the var. So I just copy it down so that I don't need to be scrolling up again to get the name. So this is the first one, and that is going to be the second one there. So let me clean all this one that we don't need. It's only the name that I need. So comma like this, then var, place the second one, and if I save now, you see that we now have this in. But it's not like the way we are expecting it to be, because we've not turned it to circle. It's a box, and again too, the content inside it is not having space at all. So let me apply padding, maybe around that 2 rem like this. This is going to create a space inside the box. Create the space. Oh, I did not put this one here. So if I save it, can you see we're going to have a space inside the box? But you know that before you can start turning anything to circle, you need to give it a definite height and width, and whatever the height and width you are using needs to be the same before you can turn that thing to circle using border radius. Because if I do border radius now, later on when you're on some other screen, it might not work correctly when I use this border radius of 50% right now. Right, can you see it's just over, it's not circle. And in order for it to be a circle, you need to, in order for it to be a circle, we need to use this thing there. So we need to use height and the width, which is what you can give your element a definite height or a definite width there, like that. So if I use height to be maybe 150 pixels, then the width too should be the same thing. That's when it will turn into circle. In order for you to have a perfect circle, the height and the width of the element have to be the same thing. What am I typing? Or the width, like this. So now once I save this thing, can you see it's going to turn it to a proper circle? But this 150 is too much. Let me reduce it to 100, since I don't know the value there. So you have to do it until you get the one that is looking like what you want there, like that. So inside this box, what do we have? Inside the box we have this h6 and we have the paragraph, and you need to style the two of them to look like this. So 76 needs to be bigger than the content under it. So how do we do this? So let's target them and we style it. But before I do that, let me move everything that is inside this box to center by displaying the box as flex. Then AIC, which is align item center, is going to move everything inside it to center. JCC, which is something you can type completely yourself, which is going to be this justify content center. What I'm doing here is that on the horizontal and the vertical axis is going to move everything that is inside it to center. But there's going to be a problem here. The problem is that once you display anything as flex, don't forget it to place them side by side. Can you see 76 and of 100, they are now side by side because I've displayed as flex. But how do you make sure that it is on top of each other? You need to change the direction, which is going to be column. When you want to paste or when you want to put something on top of each other after display as flex, you need to change the direction to column. And as you can see, everything is back to the way I want. And no matter the size of this box, they will always go to the center of it. If you still want to make this thing perfect because it's text, you can even join this text align with it. Currently it is already center, but you can still add this text align, but it's not really doing anything right now. So from this left, we have box and we have h6 inside it. So I want this one to have the same color, which is going to be that pale, because all the color here I don't think they are white. The color is this pale blue again, like that. But the other one is not pale blue. That second one is not pale blue. That one is more fainted compared to, if you look at it, I think that 76 is actually, that 76 is it white? Well, let me use this pale blue, but this that one is not white at all. That one is using this color up here, which is the one that followed this, using this this light lavender here. So let me target that one too. So that text under it, let me target it, which is going to be left. Inside the box, we have the paragraph. So all the selector that we've talked about is what I'm using here. So it will only target the P that is inside box and the box that is inside left in case there is any other box somewhere else. So the color of this one is going to be light lavender like that. And if I save it, you see that it will be using the color that I just specified right now. But it's not this big because this one is too big. It's 14 by 16 by default. So I need to change it. And currently my screen is really, I'm using a bigger, I'm zooming in. That's why it looks like this. So if I go to 100, this is how it's supposed to be normally. So this is 100. But because I want this to show on YouTube, that's why I'm increasing the size. I'm zooming into the content like that. But normally on my system, this is 100%. Right now, I'm zooming into this 150% so that it can show on YouTube when you are working it on a small device there like that. So for this H6, I need to increase the font size because the scene is bigger than this. And you know, by default, H6 is like 16 pixels. So I need to change it to maybe around that 2 rem. Let me see 2 rem like that. I think this 2.5. What about 2.5? I think 2.5 is okay. But the one under it, I want it to be it's 16 by default. So I'm going to reduce it to around that 8 pixels. 8 pixels is just 0.5 rem. As you can see, I have the extension that can convert from rem to pixels. You can see 8 pixels is just 0.5 rem like this. And I think it's too small. So let me go to 12, which is this. And you can see now, you are the one before all these things. Let me comment them out. Before this is how it looks like. But now with the help of CSS, this is what we have. So CSS is what we are going to use to turn all these things to the proper design that you're expecting to have on that page. So we are done with this particular circle. And let me quickly do this grid and this down one here so that we know that we are done with this top section. The only thing we'll focus on is this summary section, which is the right one tomorrow. So what did I give that one? What is the class for this one? I think it is text. So I have inside the left, I have a class with text. So this one too, I'm going to display it as flex in case I want, but I don't think I need to do that. Let me just apply the color from here directly. But I think both of them are using the same color. No, they are not using the same. It's like this one. So let me just do the same. So let me copy the color that I have here for the this grades. So what am I using for that grades? I'm using H2. So inside this text, I have H2. So the color should be this. So if I save it, that grade 2 should change. And at the same time, on the left, we have text and I have the paragraph. Now we are talking about the P that is here. So that one too is using this color like that. And if I paste it, that's just it. And you can see now we have the same thing like this. So let me remove this red. Where did I put the red? So that everything can look like what we have on the design. So if I remove it, can you see now everything is coming into shape, but this one is actually having white background. This, the one which is going to be the right. To the right is actually have a background of white like this. Because what is here is just white. Can you see? It's going to be white. But I need to talk to each one of them. I need to talk to them that they should take the remaining space that is left in the parent. But for now, I will leave it like that. And when we start working on all the content on this page, you see that things will start moving down. Just like the way it is before. Because if I disable all this styling here, you see that all the content are at the top. But because we apply style, some of them are shifted downward. So that's how it's going to happen here too. By the time we worked on this summary, you see that it will cover up all the remaining space that is left on this body here. So I don't need to be doing it myself. Once we get to this place tomorrow, everything is going to be in order. And as you can see here, the designing is coming into shape. But without CSS, this is what we have. Without CSS, the content is this. Without CSS. So without CSS, this is what you are going to have. It's loading. And once it is done loading, what you are going to have for the page is just all the text without anything. As you can see, this is what we have. But with the help of CSS, we started turning the content to the design that we have here. And as you can see, I did not do anything special. everything that I'm doing here is what we've talked about. The only thing that will just make it different is just the color, and that's the reason why you need to get the exact color that the design is using, so that your design can look like what you are trying to replicate there. So and all this color, you are not to do anything. Everything is under the style guide. Just go to the style guide of the design you are working on, and you are going to see what are the color you need to use, the font you need to use, and all these color now you can now convert them to variable instead of coming here to do copy and paste into anywhere you need to use some of it. If you look at it now, look at it. I'm using this pale blue here. One, two, this is the second place I'm using it. This is the third place, like that. This is the fourth place. So instead of me doing copy and paste for this color now, I'm just using the variable to represent the color. And anytime maybe in your design now, you just want to change it to another thing later on, or your boss just came in and said, no, we don't need this color again. You don't need to start going to where you've used this pale blue. You just go to the source of that pale blue and you just change the color at that place. And you see that for example, now if I just change it to 16, anywhere that I've used that pale blue, can you see it will change automatically? Not that I will start going to where I've used it, I will not start doing changes there. No, you only do the changes where you have the source. This is the source. All this one are just copy of what you have here. And once you make modification to the value here, they will have the new updated value automatically there, like that. And as you can see now, this one look like what we have at the top here. And again too, in order for this thing to look nice, I think I will give this one to background of white, like that, so that it can match what I am expecting it to have, so that here I will not have some silly whatever stuff like that. And if I want, I don't even need to put it on the right again. It's already on the main, and we are going to focus on this right tomorrow, because this is a 1 hour 41 minute cheese. So this is where I'll be stopping, and we really discuss about a lot of things, how to structure your page content. Then when you are done with the structure of the page, how do you work with the CSS? What are the things you need to set up by starting with the basic reset? If you have access to the font you want to use from the project, you can include it by using this font space and a lot of other things that we talked about. So yeah, I'll stop here, and the summary one we work on it tomorrow, and the desktop version. Can you see now? It's not looking nice on desktop. We need to make sure that on the desktop they are now placed side by side. But first, we are focusing on the mobile, and when we are done with the mobile, we now scale the design up so that it looks nice on the mobile there. So let me stop the video.